Good afternoon. Hello and welcome. My name is Jametta Magwood-Golston, and I am associate faculty here at UAGC. I will be the host of this session, Unpacking the Code, Understanding and Supporting Faculty Women of Color at Online Institutions. By joining us today, you acknowledge that this session is being recorded and will be shared with TLC related materials. Microphones will be muted for this presentation, but we encourage you to post questions and comments in the chat as I will be checking and letting our presenter know what questions and comments are coming through. Also, we have enabled live transcription. If you would like us to use it, click the live transcription button at the bottom of your Zoom window. Now, I'm pleased to introduce to you Dr. Teresa Leary Handy. She's a program chair in the UAGC School of General Studies. She encourages active engagement and is very happy to address your questions in real time. So feel free to post in the chat. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that warm welcome. Thank you all for joining me today, and I'm looking forward to having this conversation about what I consider to be an important topic that I'm a member of that demographic. So let's get started. Before we get started, I do want to share the land acknowledgement for Memphis, Tennessee, which is co-authored by representatives from the Cultural Heritage Department and legal teams from the Chickasaw Nation and Native Rights, a grassroots indigenous organization local to Memphis. And I'm acknowledging that I'm on the historic homeland of the Chickasaw Nation, of which they inhabited. So I just wanted to make that acknowledgement today and pay my respects in that regard. So I wanted to share a bit with you about myself. I'm the program chair at the university. I'm a program chair at the University of Arizona Global Campus. I'm excited to share this research work that I'm doing as part of the UAGC University Fellowship Program research grant that I received this past summer. Now I want to share why this matters with me. I was the first Black teacher hired at a private all-girls school in Memphis. The school was founded in 1847 and I was hired in 2013. So I'll let that sink in for a minute. It took 166 years to hire a Black educator at the school. But let me also add that I was offered the job after 4 informal interviews, 2 formal interviews, and a teaching demonstration. So when I heard the offer, I actually cried with the head of school. And I cried because the process was grueling and it was a very different hiring process than I'd ever had before. I felt poked and prodded, and the process seemed very unfair, especially after watching teachers after me go through a much less rigorous process. So as I entered higher education a few years ago, fresh after earning my doctorate, which focused on the lived experiences of Black female graduates of private schools from around the country, I was intrigued to understand the lived experiences of Black women and faculty women of color, and I'll be using the FWOC, so I don't have to say all of those words all the time, in higher education, specifically online institutions. So this past summer, I wrote a research proposal to explore that experience and the role peer mentoring can have in supporting FWOCs who are in online institutions. Spoiler alert, I was awarded the grant and I started the study this summer. Today, I hope that you will leave with a greater understanding of the lived experiences of FWOCs, and for the purpose of this conversation, I'm speaking of women who identify as both female and as belonging to a racial or ethnic minority group. I'm also asking that those that are listening accept the understanding that FWOCs, faculty women of color, have a unique set of challenges, opportunities, and perspectives in higher education settings. And with that being said, I hope you will learn strategies that you can support FWOCs in your sphere of influence. And I finally hope that you will reflect on that sphere of influence and develop 1 to 2 actionable steps to promote a more inclusive culture. And that's because I firmly believe that when we all work together, we all win. The historical context of FWOCs in academia is marked by a complex interplay of systemic discrimination, social movement, and efforts to advance diversity and inclusion. For example, historically Black colleges and universities, or you may hear HBCUs, emerged in the late 19th century and early 20th centuries as vital institutions for the education of African Americans, and these institutions played a crucial role in providing educational opportunities for both men and women of color beyond K-12. Full disclosure, I I attended Spelman College, which was founded specifically to educate Black women. In the 1980s to 1990s, women of color continued to face significant challenges in academia, including underrepresentation, stereotyping, and lack of support. Activism and advocacy efforts led by FWOCs and their allies sought to address these issues. And that's where you began to see the development of the critical race theory and intersectionality pop up in academia, and specifically with critical race theory in the legal school. And these frameworks provided an understanding for these complex discussions around race, gender, and other identities. In the 2000s, faculty women of color continued to face challenges related to representation, bias, and inequities. But there have been significant achievements with many women of color assuming leadership roles in academia, contributing to scholarship and advocating for diversity and inclusion. As we know now, though, many institutions have implemented diversity and inclusion initiatives to address these systemic barriers, and they are now under fire. It's important to have this historical context because it's crucial for recognizing the resilience, the contributions, and the ongoing struggles that faculty women of color experience in academia. And it also highlights the importance of continued efforts to create inclusive and equitable academic environments. Faculty women of color are often underrepresented in these positions, particularly in senior leadership roles. They face biases based on their race and gender, which can lead to feelings of isolation and lack of representation. So when we're thinking about the lived experiences of faculty women of color, we're going to talk about the first voice. We're going to hear it from the first voice. Yesterday, we had the opportunity to hear from Dr. Tamika Fitzpatrick and Dr. Karen Ivey, two esteemed faculty members at UAGC, who shared their lived experiences as FWOCs, and they really shared some nuggets. For example, Dr. Fitzpatrick spoke of an experience she described as an idea fountain, where faculty women of color are sought after for their ideas and their skills, but are often not compensated, promoted, etc. But rather those ideas are used for the benefit of others with no gain to the faculty member. And she said it so eloquently. So if you were there yesterday, you really got the crux of it. But my summary is probably not as good. But basically what she's saying is that wishes are made at this fountain of ideas, but that no coins are tossed in. And that was just powerful for me when I listened to that, because many women bring these amazing ideas and then those ideas are taken and they're not given the credit due. Dr. Ivey spoke of the ways that faculty women of color are held to a standard that insists that they adapt to the existing culture. Thus, if not doing so, they are then told that they are not a cultural fit. Dr. Ivey also spoke to, they're not really, I asked about invisible barriers, and she goes, oh no, the barriers are not invisible. The barriers are very obvious to us. So the idea that faculty women of color can just show up at work in their full identity is not how many feel. Early data from my research study also supports this. And this means that there's often stress as these women work to reconcile their professional identities with their racial and cultural identities. In one of my focus groups, a participant said, I don't think anyone really cares if she brings her whole identity to work. And whether or not this is true, it's not really for us to determine. But what matters is that her feeling and those feelings matter. No, what matters is that is her feeling and those feelings matter. For some FWOCs, they struggle with being one of few, which can also lead to feelings of tokenism, where they may feel like they are expected to represent an entire race or ethnic group. The presence of FWOCs is important to the higher education landscape because they have an intersectional understanding of social issues and that compounding effects of race, gender, and other factors. Yes, there are challenges, but the reality is these women of color bring value that is often overlooked and diminished. They often bring firsthand knowledge and understanding of diverse cultures, traditions, and perspectives, which can lead to a more inclusive curriculum and a broader understanding of global issues. Their unique perspectives enrich the learning and research environment, and their presence supports a well-rounded and holistic understanding of very complex societal issues.
Dr. Handy?
Yes.
Benita Bryant in the comments just wanted to speak on the significance of self-confidence and self-advocacy, and how
Yes.
important it is to develop self-confidence and knowing your self-worth and practicing self-advocacy and speaking up for yourself in response to the narrative that you were just sharing. So.
Yes. And Manita, one of the things that came out yesterday in our roundtable was that you need a safe space to do that, right? Like people have to feel like they are not going to be penalized or um what was the word that culturally that you are not fitting the stereotype, like you're fitting a stereotype. So people need to feel safe in that, feeling that they can do that. So yes, I agree with you 100%. And that's where allies come in, to be honest. Thank you for asking and sharing that. So one dynamic that faculty women feel is a feeling of not belonging or a feeling of othering. Othering is a social and psychological phenomenon where one group defines and establishes their own identity by contrasting it with a perceived other. And this process is characterized by viewing and treating members of the group as the other group as different, often as less worthy, and sometimes even as a threat. It's important to recognize that othering is a social construct and that distinctions made between us and them are often arbitrary and based on societal norms and historical context. Othering can have far-reaching detrimental effects on individuals and communities, perpetuating division, inequality, and injustice. Recognizing and challenging othering is a crucial step towards building more inclusive and equitable learning communities and creating safe spaces, which I was just talking about with Benita, where FWOCs can be vulnerable and feel welcomed and supported is important. One of the comments I received back after the roundtable discussion was an appreciation for that safe space to have the conversations, as I just mentioned. So now I want to ask you all, what is one thing that you can do to help a faculty woman of color not feel othered? And I want you to put that into the chat. And I just want to take a minute. Jim, uh, Instructor Goldston, would you mind helping me with that? I don't want to lose a screen as I'm doing this.
Yep. I will.
So what is one thing that you can do in your space to help a faculty woman of color not feel othered?
Benita says, sharing your unique perspective, encourage open dialogue about different cultural perspectives and experiences, offer insights when appropriate, helping others gain a broader understanding.
Yes. I will share while you all are thinking and adding. As a faculty member, I've experienced people speaking on my behalf when something has been said or someone questions something that was stated pretty clearly, and someone may say something, that they didn't understand it, and someone would say, well, I understood it, it was, and so I have experienced people jumping in and speaking on my behalf. So one of the ways that you can help a faculty woman feel less othered is you can jump in and support her when you see that she may be the target of something. You can ask for the for that voice to be at the table if you look around and you don't see anyone at the table that offers a diverse voice. Let's see. One of our new associate faculty, associate faculty members is in the chat. Toby, he says, helping faculty women of color understand all the resources available to them, such as DEI leaders and support networks. Yes. And Dr. Eve, empathic listening other than trying to jump in. Yes. Thank you.
Listening to hear, not to respond.
Yes. That's a good one. That is. Thank you all very much for jumping in and engaging. So one of the biggest questions is like, why now? Like, why is this even important? Well, why now is because there's a lot happening in the world. Heightened racial tensions, incidents of discrimination in society create a more challenging and potentially hostile environment for faculty women of color. They face unique discrimination because, gender, because they're both a female and a member of a different ethnic group. So this can result in very hostile environments, and it can take a toll on their mental health and well-being. The mere act of navigating difficult conversations or experiencing discrimination can be particularly draining and add to their emotional labor. So why now? Because it's important that the voice is at the table, and we know that diverse teams tend to be very creative and innovative. So we want to make sure that we're on that cutting edge, right, of innovation. I was in a conference also this week, Open Ed, and one of the participants said that he was feeling very isolated because of what was happening in the Middle East, and he just felt like he was invisible in the conversations. And it's important that we bring those challenging conversations to the forefront and that we don't ignore them because it's uncomfortable. Oops. So how does an institution tackle this big issue? Meaning implementing initiatives that focus on DEI? Well, first, they can focus on improved hiring practices that are free from bias and broaden that applicant pool. Dr. Ivy said it best yesterday: develop faculty women of color and create opportunities for them to thrive. One way to do this is to establish a mentorship program that provides FWOC's support and guidance. Finally, if we add in diversity training that covers unconscious bias, and this is something that Dr. Fitzpatrick talks about a lot, providing unconscious bias training, that will help people understand how their attitudes, beliefs, and stereotypes unconsciously affect a person's actions, decisions, and understanding in a way that favors or disfavors a particular group. So when we think about all of the experiences faced by faculty women of color, we know that the impact to the academic environment is then can be possibly negative if they're experiencing this stress. So there's a missed opportunity to improve student success and retention when we don't address these issues. When these faculty face challenges, it's important that they have a support network. And we have culture of care for our students, and we're really working on culture of care for our faculty, because these challenges can have a cascading effect on the entire academic environment and student success. And by addressing all of these, we create a supportive and inclusive environment for everyone. And as I said before, when we all win, when we all are doing well. So it's important that we focus on that. When we think about equity gains in academia, there are lots of ways to increase that. For the institution's part, you can ensure that promotion and tenure processes are transparent, that there are defined expectations, that there are equitable evaluations, that there's opportunities to review different types of scholarly research. Look at a person's community engagement. Look at their interdisciplinary work. You can expand the understanding of scholarly contributions by looking at their community-based research. One way that faculty women of color report being overused is where we connect that idea fountain that Dr. Fitzpatrick mentioned. Institutions should ensure that the workload for faculty women of color is fair and balanced, taking into account service and research and teaching responsibilities, and avoiding the disproportionate burdens by putting them on a lot of unpaid committee work that focus on diversity initiatives. Repeatedly, what comes out in the research is that institutions must work to raise awareness about implicit bias and microaggressions, providing training and resources. Toby mentioned that in the chat as well. So what can a faculty woman of color do to advance equity from her space? Well, just being present in an academic setting means that there are role models for students, means that they are representing the underrepresented groups. Seeing individuals who share their racial and gender identity can inspire and empower students to pursue higher education and academic careers. And that really came out in my research as well. So let's not underestimate the strong ties that they may have to their local communities, which can also position your institution for outreach efforts, which will then promote educational opportunities for marginalized groups. Faculty women of color play a vital role in driving progress toward equity in higher education, and their contributions can really help to shape a more inclusive, diverse, and supportive academic environment for everyone. This quote from Maya Angelou summarizes exactly how the women I met in the Each One Reach One study feel, that they would not take anything to change their journey now. Would it have been nice if the odds had not been stacked against them? Yes. But overall, they reported that their journeys, as varied as they have been, that inform all of their classroom practices. And they all said that everything was about paying it forward. The Each One Reach One study has 23 faculty women of color, both full and associate. It's a qualitative study. It's using interviewing, focus groups, professional development, as well as survey modalities to gather data. The study began this summer and will run through the spring of 2024. The name of the study is derived from my upbringing in the home of a Baptist preacher and a high school teacher administrator, and it's rooted in a Protestant work ethic. Therefore, I see it as my duty to always reach one, meaning I look for ways to bring more people like me to the table, in the room, and into spaces where the marginalized voice is not heard. As a P-12 private school educator, when I was the only one, I started a diversity career fair to increase the hiring And remember that school that I mentioned at the beginning? In 2013, there was just me, but now there's a Black division head, which is an assistant principal basically. And there are at least 5 more teachers and administrators, and at least 3 to 5 that I counted supervisors and professional staff members. I use my voice then to advocate, and I will for more transparency and diverse hiring practices, as well as where we get our contract bids. And I'm using that same voice now. And I will always use my voice and the privilege I have to be in certain rooms to ensure that I'm never the only one in the room. When we are thinking about how to support faculty women of color, it's important to understand their journey. And what I learned is that the journeys were as diverse as the women. For each one, the path to college teaching was unique for each one, the path to college teaching was unique. And for some, it was the encouragement of a colleague telling them they could do it. Some were first generation and didn't understand the journey, but had someone take them under their wing and guide them. Others knew that they needed more. And more is something that I really can't wait to explore as we get into the data, because more came out repeatedly. I wanted more. I needed more. My students need more. I want to understand what that is and how people are defining that. Others spoke of being lifelong learners and that the pursuit of a terminal degree was the cherry on top. Repeatedly, there was gratitude to family members who cheered them on, peers who rallied behind them, managers who encouraged them, and systems that provided the opportunities to pursue more education. And they all said that teaching chose them. The whole point of the study was to use first voice, as I said, and to explain what and how to support faculty women of color. So one of my questions to the participants was to ask them, what do you want your manager to know about you? And here are their responses. And I'm really looking forward to diving into those deeper in our one-to-one interviews. But if you can see what they all say, when I show up, all of me shows up. And the last one, don't expect less of me. All of these were very, very repeated themes throughout the conversation. So why mentoring? All participants mentioned that they would love to engage in peer mentoring, and they gave these as their reasons. They want help, guidance, they want assistance, they want to hear different experiences, and they want a dialogue with colleagues. And I think I heard that in an earlier session about how our students sometimes go to career services because they want to dialogue their decision. Having someone to talk about an experience that you're unfamiliar with can be very supportive. They want their mentor to look like them. They want someone who understands the journey. They want someone who is still in the game. And because I asked them, what do they want in their mentor? And they want someone who's still working, because they want someone who's innovative and kind of current with what's happening. But most importantly, they want a woman mentor who is direct and a good listener. So here are some strategies so far that the study has, the themes that are coming out from the preliminary findings. Mentorship, safe spaces, inclusive policies, giving faculty time to grow, providing professional development opportunities. And in addition to these strategies, Dr. Fitzpatrick mentioned in the roundtable yesterday that institutions need to take a mindset of not doing the work without us. In other words, making sure that faculty women of color are at the table and that they are listened to and not silenced, and that their voice is trusted. So now I'm going to give you 2 opportunities to kind of just think this through on your own. We have about 7 minutes. And I want you to think about ways that you can leverage your position to support faculty women of color. So what is something that you can do to leverage your position? And I want to do a waterfall. So when I say the magic word, which will be waterfall, you can put it into the chat. Are there some comments that I need to address?
Nicole Wells shares, in my experience, FWOC are often voluntold to participate in committees and other service activities to make the institution appear more representative, but their contributions still are not valued on the same level as their colleagues. They end up experiencing high levels of burnout and isolation, but without the protection of tenure, they often suffer in silence.
Yes, yes. Thank you for sharing that. Mm-hmm. Yes, change is possible in the workplace. You're welcome, Instructor Lloyd. All right, so waterfall. I want to see these, what you're going to say. Or did I stop people from talking, from typing? Well, if you didn't do it, that's okay. Advocating for myself, unbiased hot, yes. This is what you can do. I love that, Dr. Pritz. Yes. Looking beyond degrees or experience, being an ally for others. Yes. Thank you all. So next, what I want you to think about is who are the people that you can call on? Who are your allies? Yesterday, Dr. Jen Robinson, and Dr. Tanya Mooney really talked about their relationship to me as an ally, and they've both been allies for me. Dr. Robinson has really supported faculty women of color by asking them to write chapters in her book, and Dr. Mooney is really been very supportive and encouraging to me and speaking on my behalf, and she does a lot of individual work. They both have done a lot of work as allies. I want to
5 minutes remaining.
Thank you very much. I want to put 2 resources in the chat. And I asked her to tell me that because I'll start rambling. I want to put 2 resources in the chat that we talked about yesterday, and I didn't get to share them, that can be helpful to people who are beginning the journey. One is the book Equity Talk to Equity Walk. That was the foundation of the Walk the Talk UFP study I did a couple of years ago. And then the other is a 21-day equity challenge, which is a self-guided way that you can build capacity. Because Dr. Mooney shared that she builds intentional relationships with people and does personal work to build capacity and knowledge. So here are 2 resources that can help you if you are willing to support and be an ally of faculty women of color. So now, as Dr. Kruger in the, I think I'm pronouncing his, Rufus, I think it was Kruger, in that amazing plenary session this morning, he gave us a call to action, right? And it was so funny because I thought I'm going to give people a call to action too. And his call to action is very similar. It's like, use your space where you are to change policies, to broaden the access to, the information about what's available for open access resources to everybody, to students, to the population where you are. So what I want to do is, thank you. What I want to do is I want to wrap up and extend a call to action. I want to challenge you all to do one or all of these action steps. So feel free to take a screenshot. Identify support, implement mentorship programs, advocate for policy changes, host workshops and seminars, celebrate diverse perspectives and achievements, provide resources, encourage diversity in hiring and promotions. All of this is very intentional work, and I think it's work that we all can engage in. As I wrap up, here are my references, and here's my contact information. I want to just leave a minute or two. It's about 1:27. If there are any questions, I thank you all for being here today and listening to this update on this UFP, and also just sharing in the continuation of the conversation we had from the roundtable with Dr. Fitzpatrick, Dr. Ivy, Dr. Robinson, and Dr. Mooney on yesterday. So thank you. Thank you all. Thank you. If there are any questions, I'm happy to. Thank you very much. Thank you. See you all later.
Thank you, Dr. Handy, for a great presentation. Thank you to the audience for your participation in today's session. I have dropped the survey link in the chat to nominate TLC presentations for conference awards and share your feedback on your conference experience. Thank you so much for attending today, and have a wonderful afternoon, everyone.